My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. All right, I'm very late to the party on this. This is the Citizen Nighthawk. So I did a review of the newer version of this. I'll pop a link to that video in the upper right-hand corner now. But this is the one that kind of has a cult following. This is the BJ7000-52E. And this has been around for a long time, and a lot of people really, really like this watch. Well, a killer deal popped up on Amazon Prime Day, so I ordered it so I could finally check this out. Now, unfortunately, I don't also have the newer one that's already been sold off. Otherwise, I'd compare the two head to head, but I'll give some thoughts about which one I prefer at the close of this video. So, as always, we're going to do pros, cons, and then if I think this watch is worth the money. But I do want to remind you, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So price and availability. Well, as of this recording, you can pick this watch up for about $270 on eBay and about $300 on Amazon. So you can use that as a point of reference as we go through the review. So the case is 42 millimeters in diameter. It's 47.5 millimeters lug to lug, but you'll see those solid end links, they sit a bit proud of the end of the lug there. So I think the true lug to lug is closer to 49, although on wrist it does wear closer to, I would say, a 48. It's 12.5 millimeters thick, and then you do have a 22 millimeter lug width. Now the case itself is almost entirely brushed, and I like that it has a very toolish aesthetic. And then it's very angular as well. There's angled crown guards on this 8 o'clock position crown, which controls the inner rotating slide bezel. And then there are crown guards on this is your main crown, and this is a screw down crown that controls the time and date setting. So then you also have very short squat lugs, and then they do angle down, and then as you can see, the end link kind of angles the bracelet down. So there's a lot of dial here because you have a 42 millimeter dial. The inner rotating bezel just kind of extends the dial. So it's just a lot to take in, but kind of the overall design, they did a great job with this very kind of short angular case. It doesn't make the watch feel bigger than it needs to be and kind of falls away from the edges of the dial. And I really like how they pull this off, and it does wear comfortable on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. So the bracelet starts at 22 millimeters at the solid end link, tapers down to 17 millimeters, and then the 3-link style is almost completely brushed, but there are hints of high polish on the bottom of the center links. You have a double push-to-point with a signed Citizen safety catch, and this is completely milled out, which is nice to see. Usually at this price point, you will have just pressed metal clasp here, but here you have a proper milled clasp. Sizing is accomplished with just regular push pins, and then you have 3 micro positions. So that's my only real complaint on this bracelet. With only 3 micro positions and no half links, I'm not sure if everyone will get a perfect fit with this bracelet. However, sized up at my 6 3/4 inch wrist, this watch weighs in at 133 grams. So the case back is minimally decorated, it's all high polish, and it is a screw-in case back that helps to add to the 200 meters of water resistance on this watch. And then very importantly here, you see Echo Drive. So Echo Drive is a form of solar self-charging that's extremely efficient. According to the manual, this watch can go from no charge to full charge in about 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight, and then that charge should last for about 6 months. You also don't need to worry about the battery for up to 10 years. The movement powering this watch is the BJ7000, so that's a quartz Echo Drive movement that's going to be accurate to plus or minus 15 seconds a month. It also has a 24-hour GMT hand and an independently adjustable hour hand, albeit that can only be adjusted in one direction. The other direction will actually quick set the date. Nevertheless, you have a very accurate movement with a very practical 24-hour GMT hand, and it's really coolly executed on this watch. I will show you that when we get to the handset. So as we touched on before, there's 2 crowns. Now this main crown is very nicely signed. It's high polish, and then there's sort of a satin background there, and it's heavily knurled, which makes it very easy to use. This is a 6 millimeter crown, and it does screw down. And then there's a second crown on this watch, and then this one controls the inner rotating slide bezel. This one is not screwed down, and it's also not signed, but it's also nicely knurled, and you can see you can just move the inner slide rule bezel, and then you can use that to do all sorts of calculations. Now, I'm not going to explain how to use the slide rule. There's a really great watch and learn from Mark from Long Island Watch that I'll link to, and he covers how to use that. So no need to cover it here in this video. Now the crystal is completely flat. It's a mineral crystal. It sits just proud of the case, and you can see there's an ever so slight facet around the edge there. Not really big enough to do distortions, but it does catch the light on those extreme angles. And then, you're going to get my normal complaint. At this price point, I'd really like to see a sapphire crystal, but you just get mineral crystal here. I would love to see, but they did not do this in the update, but I really wish they would introduce this Nighthawk with a sapphire crystal, even if it ever so slightly increased the price. So as you can see, that outer rotating bezel slants down towards the dial, and then there's actually a second ring of information before you actually get to where you tell the time. So the hour indices are all applied, except there is the date at 3 o'clock with like a half index, and then you have the 12 and 6, which are actually Arabic numerals. And those help a lot because this is a very busy dial. The 12 and 6 really help orient you, and it makes it much easier to tell what time it is on the watch. My only complaint on this is the 12 and 6 are about half the height. It's a little bit hard to tell on camera than the rest of the indices, and I really noticed that, and it bothers me. I wish they were all the same height. I don't know why they made the 12 and 6 a bit shorter than the rest of those indices. Nevertheless, the rest of the dial is really well executed. All of the writing is super crisp, and while it is busy, I can easily tell the time, and I don't actually have trouble telling the time on this watch. And then the coolest feature is there in the middle, you can see you have two 12-hour tracks, one in white and one in red. And then you have a very special hand that's a double airplane. So that is your GMT hand, and you're just looking to match the color of the airplane with the track that matches the same color. So right now it's about 8:23, and you can see the red airplane is matched up to the 22 hour. So I have this watch set 2 hours ahead for Texas time, where one of my friends lives. So I can read his time using that cool plane. And then when the other plane comes around, you just read the white scale on the inner track. So very cool, a really interesting way to display the GMT, and kind of one of the big highlights of this. Otherwise, it's very busy dial, but that's one of the main highlights, is that really cool way that they displayed the GMT time. So we covered those two little plain hands for the GMT. The other hands, you just have sword style hands. They are filmed with Lume and edged in white, and they are quite easy to read. And then you have a second hand that is pretty much all white. It does have a counterbalance, and the registration on mine is not perfect, unfortunately, but it is quite close. Then the only other thing I will mention about this dial, technically it is black, but in very direct sunlight, it is a photo cell. So in like direct sunlight, and you might get a shot of this later in the B-roll, it can appear brownish red when it's getting hit directly with the sun. So just something to keep in mind. It won't always appear black, but even in these bright studio lights, it looks quite black, and the overall black, white, and red theme is very attractive and very well executed. So as you can see, the Lume is quite good. I think it's BJ7000, that nice blue hue, and it's keeping pace with the Seiko there on the right. So here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. Remember, it's 42 millimeters, but that quite short 47.5, 48 millimeter lug to lug actually makes it quite wearable. And there is a lot going on, but like I said, the way the case is designed, it doesn't really make it bigger than it needs to be. And I actually really like this watch, despite normally preferring 40 millimeter watches. I do actually like this one, even though it's 42 millimeters. So pros and cons. Well, pros, you're getting a lot in this package. You're getting 200 meters of water resistance, a screw down crown, a GMT function, a date, a reliable and accurate Echo Drive movement, and then a really good bracelet. And you're getting all of that for less than $300. I think my only complaint is that you're just missing sapphire crystal, but if this watch had sapphire crystal, it's a pretty dang good contender for a one watch collection. As far as cons, like I said, I would love to see a sapphire crystal at this price point. I know this is a common complaint for me, but they really aren't that expensive to add, and you have to worry so much less about scratching the crystal and really, for me, marring the overall look of the watch. Second, the 12 and 6 o'clock indices are just shorter than the rest, and I can't help but notice. I wish they were more pronounced to match the height of the rest of the indices. And then third, on the updated version, the inner ring of the two outer rings actually slopes up, and this helps the hands feel the right size for the watch. However, on this version, that inner ring is flat and it doesn't slope up until you get to the second of the two outer rings. And for whatever reason, it just makes the hands kind of feel tiny. They feel miniaturized on that layout of the dial. So is this watch worth the money? Well, I got this watch for a killer deal on Prime Day, close to $150. So at that price point, it's really a no-brainer. At $270 on eBay, I think you're still getting a pretty good deal. Obviously, I would just like to see sapphire. But other than that, you're getting a lot of functionality. And then, of course, I didn't mention it before, you're getting that slide rule bezel. And if you want to learn to use that, you can do tons of calculations with that complication. So there you have it, the older Citizen Nighthawk. Now, I really understand what the fuss is about this watch. So the price on the new one I reviewed has dropped to $284, so you really have your option between the two for about the same price. But given the choice, I would definitely pick up this version for two reasons. One, they really did a good job on the bracelet here, and I like to have an option to wear the watch on the bracelet. The newer one only comes on a strap. And then second, there's really something about this watch. I was drawn to it. I was putting it on over other watches that I thought I would never want to wear over this watch, but I just kept putting it on over and over again, and I'm really enjoying it. And I did not have a connection like that to the newer one. So I don't know what they got right on this watch, but there is something about it. So I think this is and will remain a classic. So that's going to do it for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches. I do want to remind you, if you've been enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the content of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much.